Hi, everybody. I am Alice Colsa, trauma-informed wellness coach, and I'm here with my beloved, first of all, my tribe. These are some of the most extraordinary human beings, and I'm honored that we get to be here in one space, that we get to share space with each other today. And so I first want to recognize and welcome in my beloved co-pilot, Deborah Cox. She is a somatic experience practitioner and really deeply tuned into working trauma out of the body. And as we heard, once the issues are in the tissues. And so thank you for being here and always being my partner in crime. And also want to recognize my brother and sister, Kelly and Rudy Castro. And I'm so honored to be here with you guys. I love everybody in this group so much. We could all dance and play and heal and serve together forever and ever. Let's do it. Yeah. Rudy and Kelly are co-founders of Conscious Partnership Coaching, and their medicine is really focused on relationship alchemy and focused on the container, using the container of relationship to begin to heal at the deepest level. And I loved what you said, to transform the deepest layers of trauma through the container of relationships. And that's what we've seen you do in your own personal practice with one another. And that's the work that you administer and share your medicine with others. So we're just going to dive right in, and we're going to have a powerful conversation today around trauma and triggers in relationship.
Favorite. Wow, I've been so excited about this conversation now for about a week. I think since we finally narrowed it down and really, I saw what was going on. I'm like, oh yeah, this is juicy. So don't scroll through this one. You need to stay here. So Kelly, Rudy, thank you so much for joining us. This really means a lot. I mean, I've got so many questions, I don't know, but I guess where I wanted to just start out is really just maybe both of you kind of share a little bit about your own background, how you got here, how you decided on relationship, just to give folks a little sense of who you are.
Thank you. Thank you for that beautiful welcome, Alice, and Deb, thank you so much for asking us to share a little bit about ourselves in this moment. We have our story, which is we'll share that, but truly, just personally, I come from a long line of history of trauma. Like most of us on this planet, we come to this planet and we're introduced into this traumatized world, and then we awaken to realizing that we are traumatized. That's the first step, right? So come from a long line of that, and really started my transformation early at 15 years old. Was sent to a boys' home after many years running the streets and really harming myself in many ways. And then I was introduced to therapy and counseling, and got some sobriety in many ways, and started healing some trauma. And that led me onto the path of counseling. I'm a licensed therapist, and we have a business of conscious partnership. So my whole life has been about service to others and service to myself through the entire process. It's a little bit about me. There's so much to tell, but that's just a general story that I walk into this with so much personal healing, and can stand in front of anyone and be with their trauma, because I've walked through so much of it on my own.
I'm so grateful that you were willing to do that.
Yes.
And so beautiful to witness the ongoing journey that you're so committed to for yourself and what you hold for other people. And I'm so honored to walk with him, beside him, in front of him, behind him, just, that we get to do it together. And I was myself born into Hollywood, which is not traumatizing at all.
It's like the Brady Bunch, right?
Early into the world of that business. My first commercial being 9 months old. So literally before I even ever had words. And, it was just normal. Like all of us are born into our experience, and we think that whatever our experience is normal. And then hopefully at some point we have a moment where we have the opportunity to shake up and wake up and see not necessarily from a place of blame, although there might be that initially, and there might be some anger, and that's probably appropriate. But moving beyond that to a deep understanding that we all are born into a traumatized world, right? And that it's important to acknowledge that before we can begin a journey of really untangling from all of those things. And we had similar stories of just being on a path of, destruction and looking that way. And both of us being given that gift of being in communities and being able to have sobriety in multiple ways. And that's actually where we connected. And at the time, we were not looking for love. That is not what we were looking for. We were actually very much committed to not being in partnership at that time. And so God has such a sense of humor, spirit, the universe, whatever word you want to say. I took one look at the sky and I was like, oh dear. I was just like, oh my God, there you are. Like, I recognized him, and it scared me because I was so committed at that time to focusing on healing a very specific part of my journey, which was around relationships. And so we both sat in this community, and both of us coming in with such a deep dedication to recovery in that way, and witnessed one another, from across the room, because we didn't interact, we didn't engage, but we watched each other for a year. And we'd be at the same 3 places every single week and really witnessing each other's transformation and journey. And so by the time we had our first date a year in, we pretty much knew everything about one another. And of course, not everything, but a lot. So there was already so much intimacy. And I think we both were under this, illusion. It didn't feel like that at the time, but coming in, we thought, oh, we have done all the work. Right? Like, we've been working on ourselves for years, and now we worked all this out. And so now we're available for this amazing partnership, and it's going to be so easy and fun, and no stuff at all is going to come up.
It's all healed.
Yeah, it's all healed. That's not what happened.
Yeah.
It's so funny because, Kelly, that leads us into our first question, like, because I'm in relationship and been in relationship for 30 plus years, but in that full length of time, I know, right?
Yeah.
But, we've worked out a lot of our stuff together too. And that's what our relationship has really been.
Yes.
But, I think I mentioned it earlier, how all of a sudden you realize that my triggers of trauma are activating his triggers of trauma. And then his triggers are reactivating my triggers. And then we just get into this little. So I was wondering, as the professionals, talk about the mechanics of all that, and, why it's important to really be mindful of these triggers and working together, working separately, and, all of that stuff. I'm just going to.
Yeah. That's a great question.
So good.
Such a great question. And actually, before we answer the heart of that question, I want to speak to a concept that people, I think, really struggle with. Because we're bombarded with Disney movies and just all kinds of kind of like propaganda about what love looks like.
Yeah.
And how relationship should be. And then the reality is that people do have breakdowns, what we call them, or conflict in relationships. We get triggered in relationships. And a lot of people, especially in today's day and age, they think like, you can swipe left to the next person, or, turn to another channel, like of all the social media stuff. It's so easy to discard something and move on. And in relationships, the primary principle that I believe is like, and we believe really, is that, you really are drawn to someone to actually work some stuff out. And so, like she was sharing, when we started, we thought because we did all this work that we were going to be having this magical relationship. And we were really floored and humbled, really is a word. We were humbled by this idea that, oh, it's not that way. We actually do have to confront these traumas that only come up in relational work, in relationships.
Yeah.
And so that is the most primary thing that for people to really hear, is that it's not only okay, but it's going to happen that you're going to have struggle in relationship. And that does not mean that a relationship should end. It also doesn't mean you should stay in it just because there's conflict, but it really means you don't just get to throw something away if there's some value in what you get to see for yourself. And that is, I think, one of the most important things to highlight before we even begin to talk about your question about being triggered, because a lot of people just think, oh, well, this is not working, so I'm going to move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Go back on those dating apps and find somebody else.
Yeah. And we both did that for a long time, of like, in relationship and it doesn't work, so get rid of the avatar, and then wait, what? Here's this same thing in a different package. What's happening, right? So we really hold that principle. We can't escape ourselves, right? And there's something that Rudy was speaking to about not being able to heal relational trauma outside of a relationship, because it's only going to be shown inside of a relationship. So when we came together, we were single, we were in peace and living in joy, and then it was time to deal with some deeper stuff. And it was exactly what you were saying, Deb. It's like, okay, trigger, right? And so one of our dances and dynamics that we have just had to ongoingly, work through and see those layers of, is like one of my just things has been, I've had a hard time being present because of my own trauma, right? So I can be really distracted and disoriented and scattered and all over the place. And for Rudy, his deepest trauma is coming from a serious place of neglect and abandonment. So if I'm distracted and he's saying something or I'm not paying attention, it could trigger and activate that trauma, right? So now, and this is what happens, we get hijacked by that trauma. As you know, somebody works with the body, right? It literally takes over our experience. And so we're now relating to our current reality like it is exactly what we experienced in the past. Even if it's not, we're still relating to it like it is. So then he would get triggered into that. And then my traumas around being held responsible for things that I wasn't responsible for, and a deep relationship to shame. So now I feel him, right? And I'm like spiraling into my shame, and I'm like in my trauma. And so he's in his trauma, I'm in my trauma, and now we're relating to each other from these traumatized places. And that's where that trigger ping pong starts to come in.
That's what we call it.
Yeah.
Trigger ping pong.
That's a great word. I love, I'm going to use that.
Yeah. And the other thing that we kind of talk about it, we kind of have these phrases like to help understand things, because it's so complex and it happens so fast. And they collapse with each other. So you're just seeing it as your experience, and it's hard to like understand that this is not truly who you are. It's just you're relating to it from a traumatic standpoint, And so we talk about this. We unconsciously time travel to a place in our traumatic experience where the birth of the root of that trauma lies, and we are completely acting from unconsciously from that place. And so we're just time traveling, and then we're acting from that place and playing that out. And then we talk about we're conscious partnerships. So we're trying to bring more consciousness to these moments. And so when we consciously time travel, and that's really what you're asking, is like getting to the mechanics. So this is a little bit of the mechanics. We teach and we practice in our own partnership to consciously time travel, which means that we take ourselves there to the wound and the traumatic place, and we begin to interact with it in a different way. Now that's not easy to do, obviously, but it's a language. It's being able to see things for in a different way. Like, oh, you're time travel. You're taking back to a moment where it originated, and we either do it unconsciously or we do it consciously. It's your choice.
Right. And it's not always a choice, right? Because if we don't know that we're doing it, then in that moment, it's not a choice, and we really, truly are powerless over it.
Yes.
But when we start to find out that we actually have a choice, then we can begin to practice something new, which will then give us choice, right? So, in that unconscious time travel, we're just totally, that's that hijacking. And then because we're in it and we believe that this is the truth, we create that same kind of experience because we're powerful creators. So to think about that and to consider that we can actually build an entirely new circuitry system that allows us to, instead of being totally hijacked and recreating that trauma cycle, to pause. And we have a very specific practice that we take couples through to help the mastery around this. I mean, it's not just like, oh yeah, good luck with this whole conscious time traveling thing, right? But to know that we can actually develop a system that allows us that choice and that capacity to be able to take those moments. And this is one of our favorite things to say is our triggers are our greatest treasure if we know how to relate to them that way. And so when we can start seeing, oh my gosh, every one of these moments, every one of these conflicts, every one of these places that I've been stuck is really just, they're my greatest teachers. So if I can start to understand how to interact with them in a way that I can drop in and heal these deepest wounds, then actually my whole relationship that feels like such a problem becomes my greatest opportunity to become liberated.
Yes.
I want to speak to that. Yeah, it's incredible. And I feel so lucky because Rudy and Kelly are out here in the desert, and my husband gets to spend a lot of time with them. And we did some work last year and actually started going through their video content and applying it to a situation I was in, and started really seeing some shifts and changes through their medicine and their process. My husband and I use it on a daily basis, and it's changed our ability to have a model for when something comes up. It's not that something's wrong, it's that something beneath there needs recognition and love and healing. And it's so powerful. And for those watching this that may not be in partnership, I just want to say too, this works in all relationships.
Everywhere.
All relationships. And I just want to really acknowledge you guys for this practice and for this process, because it's really changed my life. Where when something comes up, I don't like it, I'm not like, oh great, there's gonna be treasure here, this is gonna be fun. I'm like, oh, same. Right. And sometimes I can see I buck against it, right? Because the ego is powerful. It doesn't want to be wrong. It doesn't, I don't want to have a part, it's not fun. I'm pretty sure it's the other person, boring, having a part. But then when I step back, because there's no solution there, it just creates more separation and resentment. And so when I choose to willingly go into their process, I find true relief, because it drops me beneath interpretation and into the feeling, and into a lot of times the spaces and places that just need love so deeply. And a lot of times it's a child, it's a child that needs love. And so then I can kind of come back out and be like, oh my God, I'm a 38-year-old woman, but it's really a 5-year-old girl that needed something, And so this continues to just be one of the most truly effective, powerful ways I've been able to navigate through situations that I probably in the past I would have felt like, well, this is the end, and I don't mean in my partnership, but like friendships or different relationships, I would have said, I guess we're at an impasse here. But now it's an opportunity to actually deepen intimacy. So I just want to thank you guys for that. Truly, it's been life-changing. Yeah.
Love you so much.
I love you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
I also want everyone, especially the viewers, to, it's like, how many of us really had caregivers, had parents that really reflected a healthy relationship between the masculine and the feminine, or the feminine or masculine, whatever that looks like, because we've got mixed families today. But really having emotionally mature, intelligent caregivers who are able to reflect these things. I don't know that many people today who had that experience. I'm not saying that they aren't out there, but there's so many of us. So there's no guilt and shame in any of this. We all get it when we get it, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't start my work until in my mid 40s. So, you know, it's, I just want everyone to feel comfortable with, wow, I didn't know any. Well, of course not. If you didn't have the right, not the right parents, but if you didn't have the parents who had this, of course you didn't get it. You know?
Yeah.
I didn't get it.
None of us got it. And I want to really speak to something about that, because we can very easily, and you are speaking to this, Deb, is like, use this as now maybe one more thing to beat ourselves up, right? And that is not the intention or or use of this medicine, right? Because we want to look at this from a practical standpoint as well, and say the evolution of our species on this planet, okay? It's not even like our parents, it wasn't available to them. Yeah. So when we look 2-3 generations back, we're looking at war, depression, I mean, so much global trauma, right? So even our parents, they're coming out of just surviving. Yes. And they did a great job doing that, right? They pulled it off, surviving. We're now being asked as a collective to rise into more of a thriving space, but that's not what was happening 50 years ago. It's not what was happening 40 years ago. And so, you know, we're having this opportunity. We're so fortunate now because we're blessed with so many resources. You know, 20 years ago, nobody was walking around like openly just talking about their trauma and their generational, you know, that just wasn't the conversation. Where now it's more and more people recognizing and being in the conversation and doing the work, and there's therapists everywhere and communities everywhere. So we're really in a different time. And, you know, that's just important to recognize, because it does take away a lot of like oh, they should have, or we should have, or right. It's like, you know, we're all doing the best we can. And no, none of us had any reference points. We didn't have any. We were like, what are we even doing? This is so hard, you know?
Yeah, which is honestly why we're so compelled and so passionate about our work, because we didn't have those examples. And then we got into a relationship after using so much support and doing so much work on ourselves, and then still had a struggle to see what our traumas and our triggers were in partnership. And so it just really was like we were brought into the darkness of deeper layers of pain, and we kind of like scratched our way out on our own, basically, because we didn't have any of those examples to turn to ask for help in this way. Like, how do you navigate this? So through that birthing process, like the phoenix rose out of the ashes, and we were able to birth something new, you know, into the world. And that's how we see this. You know, it's a conscious partnership is like birthing a different kind of conversation and a way of looking at partnership. And remember, it's like kind of what you were saying, Alice, because this isn't, you know, I really want people to know too, this isn't just about partnership and romantic partnership. We really see this in any kind of relationship and partnership to like a powerful relationship to someone, because those are the relationships that you'll see yourself. We also like to say, you know, everything is a mirror. Your relationship, your partner is a mirror to you. It's showing you something if it's triggering you, right? So it's that way in any kind of relationship. So to know that you can practice this in anywhere, we do practice it everywhere. We practice it with our really good friends, our family, just the community at large, what's going on in the world. Like it's showing us something, and then we do our work to see what that is. So good.
And I really believe this about the work and the practice. It's that if two people show up and they're actually genuinely willing to do it, and they bring willingness, I really believe it can be repaired. Almost anything can be repaired and restored. And that's a really, and maybe it won't be the way we think it should be, the relation, but there can be a restoration of the highest intention of that relationship.
Yes.
You know, it might not be like you're saying the fairy tales of happily ever after. It might actually be like a conscious uncoupling, but there can be a conscious choice that's made when two people come together and do this work. And it's the thing I really appreciate is that it's so disarming, because you guys get beneath interpretation and also beneath even feelings, and then the fight, flight, or freeze response. And you kind of swim deeper into the origin spaces. And I've heard y'all both say this, is that a lot of times in those spaces, the feelings are so similar. So what could seem like two people are having such different experiences, the feelings of how they feel are actually more similar than different.
Yeah.
And it's just profound.
Yeah.
So I just want to, let's give our group, the viewers, something practical that they can take home with them right now, today, in this moment. Is there one little thing that you can share, one practical little exercise that they can use to, they're in the middle of it, you're there. So what's a little trick or something that can hopefully, maybe, if not completely, at least bring it down, but neutralize the sparring match? Is there some little thing? Because sometimes we don't even notice this stuff until we're after, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we would say, first and foremost, right, to take some space in a moment as soon as possible when you're both fully activated. Because if there's two people that are in full activation of trauma, it's just going to keep spiraling. And so it's really important to do our best to take ourselves and do our best to regulate our nervous system, right? So whether that's going for a walk, getting a glass of water, hugging a tree, connecting to the earth, getting some essential oils, whatever the things are that help
Just
to regulate.
Breathe. Just take
breathe.
deep breaths to regulate your nervous system.
Mm-hmm. And we have our hack, which is, this is the heart of our work, which is our 5-step process. It's the beginning of our work, but it is a 5-step practical thing that you can walk yourself through that will help you to start understanding more of what's going on. And then, of course, there's so much to learn about that and what to do with it and how to share it in partnership, but to start really seeing, wait a minute, I'm really activated. I love the saying, when it's hysterical, it's historical, because someone could do something and maybe I don't like it, but whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's things that people do that I'm like, right? And like that fight, flight, or freeze system is charged. And so those are that's good information, because I know, what happened here? Because this situation, this kind of conversation, this energy, whatever it is a trigger for me. And so then, our 5-step process is really beautiful. If you want to grab a pen, hopefully one close by, but Alice, did you want to say something?
Oh, I want to say too, we can also share your webinar in the link.
Oh yeah, perfect.
Why don't we do that? We've got their webinar, because you really walk people through it slowly. Does that feel okay?
That's perfect, because it is all laid out so beautifully.
Laid out for you. You actually have the experience to go through it and then dive deeper into Rudy and Kelly's work.
Love that idea. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
That's all important. It's because sometimes people, we just don't feel like, I think the most difficult is whenever we don't feel like we have options.
Yes.
Yeah. And really that for me is the definition of abundance, is options.
Choice.
I love that.
Choice. I have the choice. And that's empowering. So any little tools or tricks or anything that we can, provide to help folks out.
I have something to add just before you ask another question, or so hold the question. Because you really asked, like, how can you support someone before, like, when they're in it, right? Like, because that's hard. It's probably the hardest thing for somebody to do, is to learn how to disengage.
Yes. Yes.
And we really struggled in our early relationship and into our relationship, like really knowing how to like disengage. And one of the things that we do teach couples that we work with is just for them to even recognize, and you probably would know this, Deb, about how the body responds to trauma. So it's noticing, the trick is to notice like what happens to you when you're in a regulated state and what happens to you when you're in a dysregulated state. Yeah. Generally it's very similar for everybody, but you might know something very specific for you, that what happens to you when you're dysregulated, and so that's going to be a useful thing. to at least when you're in it later, another time, you might be able to catch like, oh, I am dysregulated right now. So if I'm dysregulated, that means I have to disengage.
Right. Excellent. I love it. That's, yes. Tracking the body, really beginning to have a mindfully visceral experience of, like you said, regulation versus dysregulation. Now, the key I found is most people are always constantly in a dysregulated state. That feels normal to them.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, so, you know, then we have to take it a step further. Okay, let's have a new experience of what a regulated nervous system actually feels like.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, once setting that template, then they have something to refer. I have something to refer back to. Otherwise, I'm like this, and this is the way it always is.
Right.
So true.
So true. And the baseline changes, right? So like our baseline in the beginning was both of us didn't know it, but we were always in a traumatized state. There were just some moments that were more traumatizing and triggering than others, right? So like we got to start with those. And as we've done the work, our systems have, like our baseline has totally shifted, where now we spend the majority of our time in a really authentically regulated space, not like what our baseline was in the beginning.
You're right.
That's such a good point.
No, you're right.
And I love this, what you said, Rudy, here. If I'm dysregulated, I have to disengage.
Yes.
Thank you. That's like really like the gold nugget. Like one of them. There's so many on this call, but really like clear takeaway.
And it's okay. It's okay.
And okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
You know, I know.
Time out.
Yeah. Time out in sports all the time. Why not take a time out here?
Yeah, and sometimes I think we need to know what words to say, right? Because a lot of times in that cycle too, like pineapple. If someone has deep abandonment trauma and suddenly one person's like, I'm disengaging, that can throw it even more intensely into trauma. So when I'm dysregulated, disengage. And what's powerful to say is to take ownership for that, right? Is just to say, I'm finding myself in a really triggered space and I need to take care of myself, right? And I'm coming back to this conversation. It's like, it's just a gentle way to disengage that's saying, I can't show up for this right now, right? So you may or may not remember that when we get into a triggered response, all things go out the window and we know that, but it's just something to hold and to know that there's a way to say it in a way that might not be as triggering if that's the dynamic.
Good point. Yeah,
so powerful.
Yeah, just walking away, that's not what we're saying. Whenever you need to regulate and walk.
Yeah.
No, there needs to be, it's a compassionate way of, I feel like, of communicating with my partner that, okay, we're like you said, Alice, we're at an impasse, but it's not complete here. I just need some time. I just need some time. And if you have a respectful relationship, that's really not going to be an issue. The other person's going to go, oh, okay, sure. Hopefully.
I feel really compelled to share something, especially coming from like the male avatar body here, about something, because it's really powerful. It just like overcame me while we were talking. And it really has to do with the vibration of trauma and the impact, like a pebble hitting or a big stone hitting a calm lake, and it just has a ripple effect. And those ripple effects are each generation that just ripples. And like, especially for, I know this is mostly for women, like to know like how the male masculine energy have created a powerful, painful ripple effect for, and there's no blame, but just like how that energy has really caused a ripple effect for especially women to be traumatized. Men are definitely traumatized too, but women, that baseline talk, that's where it came up for me, is like thinking about that baseline, to know that we are really all traumatized, and to start having like some real compassion for our experience, because we're carrying the vibration of that from the generations before us.
Yes.
And to like give love and compassion for all our generations and our ancestors, to know that like we're calming this nervous system down. The lake is starting to calm as much as we can create that for the planet, you know. And we have all different types of traumas that we're dealing with, but for women it's one way and for men it's another, and we're also collectively experiencing things. But just to know together collectively that we really are carrying the vibration of trauma. And it's just to help to just to nurture that part of ourselves.
It's so interesting because that was my next question, Rudy.
Of course.
To you specifically, as you know, what I consider a healthy masculine influence. If there could be, maybe you already answered this question, if there could be one thing that you could say to a woman regarding a relationship with a healthy masculine, just a little nugget of gold.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I really felt the pull for that, you know, for that question. And my heart is like really just so open to this idea of like how I personally caused harm to women, and clearing that up throughout my adult life, and then being able to stand for other women and be a safe masculine energy, you know, and to know that like they are out there.
Yes.
You know, men are out there and we're doing the work. And I feel deeply compelled outside of what we do together in our conscious partnership. I'm very compelled to work with men, and that's what I do. And it's for that reason, to keep creating a safe container for men to see how they were traumatized, in order for them to be a safer container for the women in their lives. And, you know, I witnessed my mother, who was a major drug addict, be beat and almost killed by men. So I really know what it's a visual experience, even of like what it looks like for women to be harmed by that masculine energy. And so my heart is just really saying we're in this together, and that we can do this together, and that you can trust men that are doing the work.
Yes. Oh, it's so beautiful. Kelly, same question, girl. You had anything to say to a man about having a healthy relationship with the feminine? What would that be?
Oh, I'm just taking in what Rudy just shared. It's so beautiful. And you know, in my deepest heart of hearts, I know and trust that we're all in this together, and there's so many layers of this pain and this trauma, and that piece around hurt people, right? And so how far back this goes and how deep it is, I mean, it really is a lot. Yeah. So those of us who are coming in now, and this wave, this generation who's like, okay, we're gonna be the ones to start clearing it out. You know, I know how much I've had to heal for myself to be available to be in a loving, healthy relationship with the masculine. And I've had to heal so much of my own wounding and shadow stuff around the feminine. And that shadow and wounded feminine is also very hurtful, right? And so I've also had to spend a lot of time cleaning up and taking responsibility for how that hurt place in me hurt the masculine. And then just knowing too that I carry both. Yes. And so where are those wounded places within me harming each other still? You know, where is the masculine oppressing the feminine within my own self, let alone out in the world? Yeah. And so it just goes so deep. And, you know, something that I felt also just that ties to this that I touched on earlier about, you know, looking and having compassion for just the reality of where we are as a human species. And I think sometimes that message can be heard and just say, oh, okay, well then we'll just have compassion. And yes, that's powerful, but not when we bypass all of the pain. Because just because something is what it is doesn't mean that it hasn't created a massive impact, right? So part of the most important piece of healing truly is to, yes, like it is what it is. Anna, I've been really impacted. So I get to be honest about that. And I get to be honest about where I've been deeply impacted by other people's trauma, where I then have impacted others with my trauma. And so we're all in that, right, cleaning up the mess and the wreckage of our presence on this planet, truly. And so I feel really grateful that we get to keep healing those layers together. And there's such a deep willingness for both of us to be responsible, you know, because 10 years ago, I wasn't available for a relationship with a healthy masculine. This just wasn't even on the table, you know.
Exactly.
So
Me too.
who I've had to become,
Yes.
right, in my own self is what has been so important. And just to be willing to keep doing that work and take a high level of responsibility. Yeah.
Thank you both so much. This is such a powerful conversation. And we could literally talk for, this could be a whole, you know, weekend seminar summit. So we just like scratched the surface. And I just wanted to when you're talking about the ripple, Rudy, and then Kelly, about cleaning up the presence and everything you guys have done, you know, something that, to kind of zoom out a little bit, I loved what you said around, like, we can be in acceptance and have compassion for things are the way they are, but to also simultaneously recognize the damage and the wreckage that that needs to be honored, that needs to be healed, that needs to be that needs to be witnessed with love. And I think it's a very fascinating intersection that I don't know a lot of healers or therapists that are really navigating both sides of that coin, of saying we stand for the vision of what's coming, and we also have the deepest compassion. We know that things are in divine order, and there's simultaneously a lot of wreckage here.
Yes.
And we need to not bypass any feelings, physical damage of the body, emotional damage of the heart, the spirit. So I just want to really acknowledge all three of y'all, because I feel like this is a very interesting, like fascinating, like the most important intersection that I think that really all makes us tribe.
Yeah.
Is to be able to stand with somebody in deep pain and hold the vision of what's possible, and also witness the pain, and know that there are tools and that healing's possible. So thank you, you know, and collectively we are, I always say this, but I believe we're the transition team, you know. we're the transition team, you know. And it's so rewarding to get to do it with humans like you, Deb, and like you, Rudy, and like you, Kelly. So thank you.
We feel the same way about you. Thank you, because that's the reflection of you. You know, you are one of the people on this planet that I know is holding the highest possible vision for humanity, and also has a big enough container and so much wisdom to be able to hold the space for that pain to be seen and witnessed and loved. And so thank you, sister, for all the spaces that you're spreading that medicine. And I'm so grateful, and I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else.
It's really the best. And that's maybe something we can end with, is that this work is challenging, and it will push you to beyond what you feel like you can be capable of. It will keep, like Kelly and Rudy are saying, expanding your caliber and your container and your bandwidth. And at the same time, there's a tremendous amount of joy that comes. I think people don't embark sometimes on the road of healing because they're like, I don't want to look at all that pain. But what is it Joseph Campbell said? The more we numb our pain, the more we numb our joy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when we start actually looking at this, we actually start experiencing equal parts of joy, because we're not turning the volume down anymore. And so if it's scary for you, but you feel the call, I would just encourage you, you know, explore Rudy and Kelly's webinar, see what's there, because underneath the trauma and the wounds and the hurt is love.
Yes.
You know, and freedom.
Yes.
Freedom.
Yes.
Liberation. Yes.
Liberation.
Woo!
Liberation.
Yes. And that's our birthright. We just forgot.
These two are here to help you remember.
All
We
of us
all here to help you remember.
in this tribe. I'm so, just both of us, so deeply honored to sit with both of you, because we have the deepest respect for who you are and the work that you're doing and the service and the heart, the purity of your intention and what you're here to do on this planet. And it's such an honor to sit with both of you. We love you so much.
It's crazy.
Crazy.
Love you. Thank you.
Love you. Thank you all. We'll post information. So if you want to find out more, it'll all be Deb? Down below.
Somewhere. It'll be somewhere in there.
It'll be in there somewhere. Thank you guys for your time. Thank you, Deb, for co-piloting.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You guys are amazing.
Thank you.